the latest update coming in from Russia, the bilateral between India and Russia. And we just heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin making their opening remarks. Let's go across to my colleague Rishabh joining us on the broadcast more on this. Rishabh, as we speak now, the bilateral is underway, a very important one. And like we were talking about it earlier, also it's Prime Minister Modi's second visit to Russia within this year. And, messaging is very, very important, isn't it?
Well, definitely. Messaging is very, very important. And what we just saw is the beginning of the delegation level talk between India and Russia, where Indian Prime Minister was accompanied by External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, among other officials from India, as well as similarly, President Putin was, accompanied by his entourage, the foreign minister, as well as the other ministers and other officials from Russia. And both the leaders started by saying that India and Russia believe in each other. India and Russia, consider each other a very strong ally and friends, and that is something that showcases that both the countries who have had traditional cooperation continues to hold the same place in each other's diplomacy as well as development partnership. Apart from that, what's very noteworthy, the Prime Minister did mention Ukraine in the opening statement. He did speak about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and that showcases that India is not going to let go of this opportunity to ensure that dialogue and diplomacy should be the way forward. Remains to be seen how things unfold from there. And here, as of now, the delegation level talks have begun. What we are given to understand that this also will have one-on-one between both the state leaders, be it the Russian President Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Both the leaders will have one-on-one meeting post-delegation level talks as well.
Right. Rishabh, requesting you to stay on with us. Let me now go across to my colleague Pradeep Datta as well, joining us live for more on this. Pradeep, now, because this Brics Summit was happening in Russia, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine specifically definitely was going to come up. And with Prime Minister Modi making a reference in the opening remarks before the bilateral, the message is absolutely clear.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has already set the tone for the bilaterals because he has already made it clear that they believe in dialogue, diplomacy, discussion. And this 3D formula is only going to lead to de-escalation. He said that they always believe in humanitarian approach. And this Brics Summit has given him an opportunity once again to discuss on these lines and to ensure that peace and prosperity prevails in this region. This is not first time that Prime Minister is playing a role of a negotiator. In the past also, we have seen that how Prime Minister had been to Ukraine also. He met the President Zelensky. A similar kind of a message was conveyed there also. So that is what is expected from the bilateral while he is going to talk to Vladimir Putin. One-on-one dialogue will be there, discussion will be there. So he is going to definitely bring this issue because at the end of the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi very well understands and realizes because Ukraine is the breadbasket and Russia also a very important power. So once if there is a peace between the two countries, that's going to be good for the different parts of the world because otherwise we have seen that many countries had been starving ever since the war between the two countries is going on. So it's a problematic situation. So Prime Minister wants to play a role of a negotiator. And the other I think that will be very important will be bilateral between Iran and India because that is what actually everybody is looking at. A few days back I was in Israel. I was talking to the spokesperson of the foreign ministry there. He too said that India need to use its influence because India is the only country that has increased its influence over the world. The charisma of the Prime Minister is so good that everywhere he is acceptable. Not only he is acceptable to Iran, he is also acceptable to people in Israel. So people in Israel feel that he can really play a very important role to ensure that the situation de-escalates and no more Iran is going to help and support all those proxies who have been fighting against Israel. This is the Israeli viewpoint. But so far as Indian viewpoint is, India wants that there should be peace in this region because if there is going to be trouble in the in this Asian, in this Middle East countries, so there could be a problem so far as the economy will be affected. Suez Canal, Red Sea, and because of this region, there can be problem because everywhere it can reach light to the inflation rate. So because the transportation prices will be high once the the prices of the crude oil is going to increase. So already Modi diplomacy is at work, and from the very beginning, that inaugural remark, the Modi has set the tone for the bilateral. He has conveyed a message that he is here for the peace in the region, whether it's between the Ukraine or between the Russia, or whether it is between the Iran and Israel. That is what actually Modi believes in, and that is the message he has conveyed.
Right.
But what is more important is that he also conveyed another point. He said that in last 3 months, for twice I had been to Russia. First I was in Moscow, now I had been to Kazan. One, there is a very historical relationship. The consulate is going to open. This is further going to strengthen ties between the two countries. And this shows that how strong our relationship is strategically, geopolitically also. And it's a friendly ties because there's all-weather friendship between the two countries, which everybody is knowing about. So that is the message from the Prime Minister.
Right. Stay with us, Pradeep. Let me go back to Rishabh, who also continues to be with us at this point in time. Rishabh, you know, this comfort level that Prime Minister has with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the bonhomie was very much on display. The way Russian President Vladimir Putin came out to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi, there was a handshake, a hug and a handshake. Again, the way he took Prime Minister inside, for this bilateral that is currently underway. Now, that also is important for the people who are watching this Brics Summit very, very closely. And amidst all of this, an important statement coming in from the Prime Minister. We believe there should be peaceful solutions to conflicts, clearly setting the tone of how, this visit of Prime Minister to Russia is going to be.
Well, definitely, during the Brics Summit, on the sidelines of Brics Summit, India is going to hold bilaterals with the stakeholders. And when we say stakeholders, we talk about stakeholders like Russia and Iran. The Russian delegation level talk have just begun. We heard the opening remarks, and the Prime Minister setting the tone very right that diplomacy is the way forward. Dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward. And as India has been saying, the solutions cannot be found on the battlefield. And that is something that was very evident in the opening statement of the Prime Minister in Kazan as well. We heard it from President Putin also that how much he and Russia consider India a close ally and a trusted friend. Mr. Putin also went on to say that how the second visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Russia within a year showcases the closeness of the countries, while Prime Minister from India very categorically spoke about how India has brought the message of peace, and given that between the last visit in July and this visit in October, the Prime Minister has visited Ukraine, Prime Minister has visited US, Prime Minister has visited European countries, and the way, this whole, the visits between the two bilaterals have happened, one could have thought that India-Russia relationship will see a dip. But the way Prime Minister was welcomed by the Russian president, it showcases that how much of bohemia, how much of closeness, how much of trust there is between India and Russia.
Right. Now, Rishabh, also what is going to be important is that bilateral that you've been telling us is also on the cards. But of course, confirmation is yet to come from the Ministry of External Affairs. The bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Any clarity on that? Because just on the eve of this Brics Summit, we had the big news of an agreement between India and China coming in on the issue of line of actual control.
Well, definitely, an agreement on patrolling on line of actual control has been announced by the Foreign Secretary yesterday, has been stamped by the External Affairs Minister, and today the Chinese statement also came in, and the Chinese statement speaks very broadly of the agreement, where they say that, yes, there has been an agreement on the patrolling, which means that Indian troops and Chinese troops would be patrolling till the point, the line of patrol, before the 2020 Galwan skirmish, the Galwan tragedy that happened, where we as well as Chinese troops lost our men. Before that, there was a status quo, and an agreement has been reached. What sources suggest that till that point, patrolling will happen. Remember, similar thing happened back in 2017. There was a standoff between India and China, though back then it was months. This time, this is 4 years that we are talking about. Back then in Doklam, India and China was face to face. There was a standoff. On the eve of SCO summit, a resolution was announced, and then came the bilateral back then. Here also, the way in a Brics Summit press conference where Prime Minister's visit to to Russia was being discussed, Foreign Secretary talks about China and talks about China in detail about the agreement, and in a way sends out a message that things are moving positively between the two neighboring countries, and what may culminate is a bilateral meeting. And for quite some time, for last 2 to 3 weeks, the way statements have been coming in from the Chinese side and the Indian side, things started looking positive. For example, External Affairs Minister have stopped using the term abnormal relationship between India and China for quite for some time, for last few months.
Right.
And the way Chinese ambassador who had just come to India 3 months ago have started talking about India-China mutual understanding and development partnership that clearly paved the way for an agreement, which agreement might lead to disengagement and further resolution as well. We are looking at a bilateral meeting between India and China, maybe later today or latest by tomorrow.
Maybe later today or perhaps tomorrow. Remember, Prime Minister Modi is going to be in Russia only for the 2 days, the next 2 days, which is today and tomorrow. For the moment, thank you very much, Rishabh, as well as Pradeep, for joining us with all of those details. We will slip into another very, very short break, but more news and updates coming your way on the other side. Stay with us.